Okay, this is going to be a brief tutorial from a complete novice who's never ever done this before and who has no carpentry skills whatsoever on how to build a weightlifting platform. I'll start out with the materials involved, and I'll flip the camera to show you what you need. This is going to be an 8 foot by 8 foot weightlifting platform. I purchased 5 sheets of 4 by 8 plywood. This is the low grade plywood. As you can tell, it's not very aesthetically pleasing. Also, and what might be the most difficult thing to find, are stall mats. Ideally, I would get a 4 by 8 stall mat, and you'll see later on why that would work best. But all I can find in town, and what's most common even online, are 4 by 6 stall mats. So I had to buy 2. What I'm going to do is bisect these stall mats into 2 sections. Ideally it would have been 2 feet by 8 feet, but these are going to be 2 feet by 6 feet. And then I'm going to have to use the second one down there to fill in the gaps. Again, if you can find a 4 by 8, that would be perfect, and the product in the end will come out much better. So the plywood cost me about 20 bucks each. Like I said, I got a low grade. In a perfect world, you would buy 4 sheets of the 4 by 8 in the low grade and 1 sheet of the 4 by 8 in a higher grade, because that 1 sheet is going to be all that's exposed. That's actually going to be the area where your feet are going to be touching as you're weightlifting. So what I've done is I've looked at all sides of these, and I think I've determined that this one here is in the best condition aesthetically. Also, no major knots, cracks, no major discoloration in the area that my feet are going to be touching. So this is the one that I'm going to be putting on top. Okay, so step 1, lay of your 4 by 8 sections of plywood in one direction. It doesn't matter. So in the direction that I'm filming, I've laid these widthwise. And at this point, I'm going to lay my adhesive generously on both pieces of plywood. And then I'm going to lie the other 2 pieces of plywood in the opposite orientation. So as you can see, these are going east to west. The next 2 sheets are going to go south to north. It would actually be west to east. Sorry, don't mind me, I'm OCD. Not sure you can see it very well, but as you can see, I did a wonderful job at laying down the adhesive as sloppily as possible. This is actually all 3 tubes, so hopefully at this point you're not an idiot like me, and you'll realize that you should have bought at least 4 or 5 tubes, because you also need to use the goo to mount the stall mats to the plywood on top. Lay your remaining, or 2 of your remaining 3 boards in the opposite orientation. Next, I'm going to do screws all around the perimeter of each. In that step, I took my 1 1/4 inch gold wood screws and placed them around the entire perimeter of the sheets of plywood. I spaced them probably about 12 inches apart, and I made a point to drill them in about 2 inches from the edge so as to not split the plywood. I also went up and down the middle. Next step, I measured 2 feet in from each end to mark a spot where I'm going to lay the top 4 foot by 8 foot section of plywood. Doesn't have to be super precise, but I used just a Sharpie, tape measure, and a length of steel that I will soon use to build my squat rack as the straight edge. And as you can see, it doesn't travel all the way to the top, but no big deal. It's basically just giving me a good idea of where it should lie. And at this point, I will apply adhesive to this shitty side of the piece of plywood and lay that down right here. So that's it for this section. Okay, I laid down another tube of adhesive, and once I got the plywood down where it should, again in the opposite orientation of the previous layer, I took my tape measure and made sure that the 4x8 sheet is exactly 2 feet away from this edge. So this section here, from that lip to this lip, is 2 feet on both sides. So now that this is perfectly square, I'm going to drill in the 1 1/4 inch screws. Okay, this section is now completely screwed down. It's important to note that on this top sheet and this top sheet alone, you should only screw along the 4-foot sections on the end. You should not screw along the length of the plywood because you don't want the screws at any point in time poking up and tripping you or anything like that. So only screw along the 4-foot sections. Okay, and here you have the finished weightlifting platform. My buddy and I just did a workout. That is not a mock 405. That was our last set today, which is actually not too impressive for us. We're not super strong, but we do okay. But the platform works perfect. One suggestion is certainly take the time to find, there's me in the mirror, certainly take the time to find the 4x8 stall mat, because not only was cutting it a major pain in the ass, but those ends that we pieced together, it's not perfect for the long run. Granted, that's where the squat rack will go, so it will have no impact on the functionality of the weightlifting platform. But if you're a perfectionist like me, it's just not right. So in the end, I'm 98% pleased, and this thing is a heavy beast. It took my buddy and I about 5 minutes of heaving just to get it from here over to here. But you know, in the end it's done, and this is something that should last, you know, a decade or more. Total cost is just barely north of $200. The liquid nails and the screws and the 5 pieces of plywood, the stall mats, and the caulking gun, and yeah, so just north of $200. Save yourself probably 60% of buying it from somebody who's going to make it for you, and I think you'll really enjoy it. But that's that. I'll kind of give you the full view, and I'm really happy with it. I did 90% of this by myself, and the only reason why I had help with the last 10% is because he had the tool I needed to cut the stall mats, which was still a major pain in the ass. But this is a job that can be done by yourself in, you know, probably 2 hours or less. So definitely a reasonable task to take on, even if you don't have, you know, a lot of handyman skills. So this is it. Footprint is reasonable when the squat rack is on there, so I'll have plenty of space out front here to do everything you need to do. And yeah, good luck. You won't really need it though, it's not that hard.